Hey there, Mikko here, back with another lesson, and this time we're going to take a look at minor 251s and minor 25s. So I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with major 251s and probably minor 2 as well, but the minor 25 takes a little bit more of a consideration. So first off, what is it? So it's, let's say we're in key of C minor, we have D minor 7 flat 5 to G7 to C minor. And I've talked about minor keys and minor tonalities and scales before, but let's just try to play the most obvious scales first, which would be Locrian over the minor 7 flat 5 chord, Phrygian major or Mixo flat 2 flat 6 over the G7, and let's do Aeolian, which would be the most obvious choice for the minor chord. Some of you are thinking, oh, those scales are lame, but let's just see what that sounds like. So I have a loop here where I kind of left the chords pretty, I didn't give away the extensions, so they're pretty triadic. So Locrian, and Mixo flat 2 flat 6, and Aeolian. And some of you are thinking, well, yeah, so the D Locrian and C minor are the same scale, and the Mixo flat 2 flat 6 is almost the same scale, except for the B. So maybe we could play C Aeolian over the whole thing. Sure. Right? Now, the first scale we could change would be the C minor scale, because as I have mentioned before in previous videos, the tonic in a minor key is something that needs to be considered. We don't play in early jazz, we don't play a minor 7th on the tonic minor chords, only when the minor chord is subdominant, which is not that common in early jazz actually. So we play like a 6 chord or even a minor major 7 or a minor 6 when you listen to players like Django Reinhardt and those types of players. So that means that we can play melodic minor there. So I'm going to do the same thing as before, but I'm going to switch to melodic minor for the C minor. Right? Gives you that sound. So now, what else can you do? Yes, you can ignore the minor 7 flat 5 chord and think of those 2 bars as G7 and play Mixo flat 2 flat 6 or Phrygian dominant over those 2 bars, which gives you that early jazz sound. So if you have a tune like what is this thing called, Love? It's supposed to be G minor 7 flat 5 to C7 to F minor. But I think, I'm not sure of the original changes, but if you play with early jazz players or Django type players, they've only played C7 there. And then G7. So those 2 chords, the minor 7 flat 5, came probably with bebop. They came later. The bebop era, those players like to add a bunch of 2/5s and chromatic 2/5s and 2 chords and all that. But it's nice to treat it as a old jazz kind of style. So I'm gonna play G Mixo flat 2 flat 6 over those 2 bars, and then I'll play any kind of minor scale for the C minor. Okay, so that works great, especially if you're playing in a fast tempo situation. Now, bop scales is another option, obviously. Some people complain I talked about bop scales, but hey, I like bop scales. Leave me alone. In this book that I've mentioned before, there's a great thing that I realized from working from this book is that you can play the D minor 7 flat 5. It's not obvious which bop scale we're supposed to play there, so he suggests a B flat mixo bop scale over that chord. Over that chord. So if you start on D, you get this. So it's a Locrian scale with an added fifth, I guess. Works great over that D minor 7 flat 5. And then I play a mixo flat 2 flat 6 bop, which is a mixo flat 2 flat 6 scale with an added major 7, right? Nothing strange about that. Over the G. And then C melodic minor bop over the C minor. Which is adding, it's a melodic minor adding a flat 6. So this is what that sounds like. Okay, so that works as well. Now, one common thing to do is to play melodic minor modes over this whole thing. So for the first chord, the D minor 7 flat 5, we can play Locrian natural 2 or Locrian natural 9 scale, which is derived from F melodic minor. So F melodic minor over that chord. Then we play G altered, which is A flat melodic minor, and then C melodic minor. That gives us this movement of harmony. So F melodic minor to A flat melodic minor to C melodic minor. So we're moving the sound up a minor third and then up a major third, which is kind of interesting. So you can play some idea, melodic minor idea, and then just move it. Or just a chord. Also a good idea is just mess around with those scales, just practice them. I remember Joe Diori showed me this thing. You can take that pretty far. So he plays a F, and then G, and then A flat, and then moves that to A flat. So it sounds like this, right? So for some people that might be stretching things a bit too much, and obviously it depends on the context. If you're on a jobbing gig and playing with a vocalist and you start doing that, it might be a bad idea, but if you're jamming in someone's basement, right, it might be a great idea. So it's just interesting to mess around with those kind of sounds. Now the problem with this is that that Locrian natural 2 has that note E natural in the scale, which is a major third of the actual key we're in, C minor. So that note kind of stands out, and it could be a hip sound, but it depends on the context. It can also be a kind of weird sound. If you're playing, now you're just playing over 2/5. So let's say I'm playing over a tune that has a bunch of 2/5s and kind of not a specific key, then it works great. But if you're playing in a tune like that is really in the minor key, like I don't know, this one. Black Orpheus. And you start playing that scale, it might sound really strange or hip, but you just want to be careful with that note and be aware of that note stands out. What else? Well, so you can, one thing you can do with that is you can play a voicing that has that note and then lower it, and then lower it one step to the 9th of the C chord. You get a kind of a I'll do it with a vamp. Then it works because it's kind of going somewhere. I hear that kind of sound in Latin jazz a lot. Now, what else? Yeah, going back to what I said before, where you can ignore the 2 chord. You can pick any kind of dominant scale, or not any perhaps, but there are other options to make it sound more modern and hip. You could play a whole tone scale over the whole first 2 bars, for example. Right? Or symmetrical diminished, which also has that note E in it, so it's a weird sound, but it could be kind of modern sounding. And so on. So I digress. Now, this is pretty common, these things. What is not as often mentioned, in my opinion, is that you can actually treat the 2 chord as a regular minor 7 chord. In some tunes have that, like what is it? You know, the shadow of your smile? It's an E minor, but it starts on F sharp minor. So, and also I guess invitation. Now there, nobody ever talks about what you're supposed to do there, and the way I treat that is that I think of that as major. The first 2 bars we're in C major, but then all of a sudden there's a minor chord. So, but then you can add altered extension to the dominant. But I'm even gonna keep this loop and show you what I mean. So I'm gonna play regular minor 7 over that chord. I hear what's his name, Grant Green, do that all the time. Plays that like. And it sounds totally fine to me, even though it's theoretically wrong to do so. That's why it's good to lift solos, because you realize that, wait a minute, they're doing this thing, but my theory book I got in school said never mentioned this, right? So, and I had a teacher who actually said like those minor 7-2-5s, is it minor or is it major? It's like it's up for grabs. You know, you have to consider the melody of the tune though. So if the melody has that flat 5 in it, like in Stella by Starlight, right? You want to be aware of that when if somebody's playing the melody or singing, you can't play a regular 5/5 there. But for the blowing, you can totally do that. So that's why it's a good idea when you're comping to leave out the 5th. You just play the 3rd and the 7th and leave it open for whoever is soloing to do whatever they want. So I'll leave you with another example that I've lifted a solo by. It's Keith Jarrett's playing on Autumn Leaves. I recommend you listen to Keith Jarrett on Autumn Leaves because he does that all the time in that solo. Let me erase that vamp here. So if we have Autumn Leaves, so I played a regular minor 7 there, A minor 7.